Welcome back. In this part 2 of the Breaking Through Bad tutorial, we will begin with discussing the subject of mind programs. I want you to now think of the mind as being encoded with powerful mind programs. We have different mind programs for different actions, where each individual mind program has a conditioned response that helps us to perform actions. Psychologically speaking, we have work programs, eating programs, family time programs, social programs, exercise programs, bathroom programs, sex programs, and even picking the nose programs. Literally, everything that we do habitually will have a specific mind program which makes us efficient and effective at doing that specific thing. A mind program is a set pattern, a routine, a thought process, emotion, style, and skill of how we perform certain behaviors. Those mind programs can be positive and energized in nature, and they can be negative and de-energizing in nature. Even with mental health issues like depression, procrastination, loneliness, self-loathing, stress and anxiety, etc., we have mind programs with set patterns that make us think, feel and behave that way. The downside of mind programs is that they are unkind of, which means exactly like but not in a nice way, make us behave like a predetermined and predictable robot. Each day we awake, the mind programs start running inside the head with their set patterns and then lead us directly towards the usual patterns of behavior. These mind programs are conditioned within the unconscious aspect, where without second thought we seamlessly transition from one routine task and habit to the next. There is no second thought because the mind programs have powerful thought forms that unconsciously dominate our behavior. We have a conditioned response that automatically responds a certain way to situational and environmental stimulus. The conditioned response usually occurs in the context of, when this happens, I will do that, or if that does not happen, I will do this instead. Either way, the response is to impulsively do what we've always done in similar situations. Then we have fits-based responses that are especially prominent mind programs. FITS is the acronym for fears, insecurities, traumas and shames. This means that whether it be perceived or real, whenever we experience a situation or environment that is similar to a time in the past that we were subjected to a severe or subtle type of harm and was made to feel powerless, inferior or unworthy, then this triggers a conditioned response to be flighty, evasive or defensive towards that situation. This type of response is particularly limiting for those who suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder. With PTSD, the trauma of adversity, abuse or violence has been etched into the mind-body as this hyper-reactive speed dial switch that makes one hyper-vigilant towards any situation or person that is similar to and symbolic of the past trauma. We also develop powerful mind games with a pain to pleasure response, where just one stressful experience tripwires the recall of a pre-punishment memory that is linked to a pre-reward memory. The pre-punishment memory is a time in the past that you experienced a similar stressful interaction, which is neurolinked to the pre-reward memory of a time that you indulged with a soothing pleasure to escape that stress. This recall happens lightning fast and is barely noticeable. What follows the recall is a strong, compulsive urge to repeat the activity of that remembered habit. To summarize, the mind programs are conditioned within the unconscious aspect as these automatic responses to situational and environmental stimulus. They are powerful thought forms that form the habitual self, where you, the conscious awareness, is both asleep and along for the ride of whatever your mind is conditioned to think and do. When engaged with the directives of a mind program, you have no self-control. The self is being controlled by thought forms. We do, however, think that we are in control of our behaviours because we think we are thinking our thoughts, and yet we aren't. These thoughts are pre-programmed thoughts, learned thoughts, habitual thoughts that are autonomously thinking. We also fantasize that we can quit our strongest habits any time that we like and make massive personal transformations anytime we choose, and yet we are fooled by the sophisticated illusion of free will. When triggered by and engaged with the mind programs of our habits, we are a slave to their overriding directives and in a state of free won't. Free won't is the lack of free will. Free won't change the way it behaves. Free won't give up those pleasurable habits. Free won't concede that its way of thinking and doing is wrong and harmful. Free won't thinks it is in control. Free won't be told otherwise. This means for you to make breakthrough changes and upgrade the quality of your life, you must realize that the habitual traits of your conditioned mind will always be working against you. For change to happen, you have to become disagreeable and unreasonable with yourself. You must refuse to go along with whatever the habitual self desires and suggests. You have to break the patterns of the old mind programs as you instill new mind programs. You have to both go to war with and go to work with yourself. However, most people refuse to concede that the traits of their habitual self are poor, wrong, or limiting. The habitual self is someone that they've grown attached to and have become familiar and comfortable with. The habitual self is someone that has helped them to cope in the past, even succeed at times, and thus they believe that the same formula, same behaviours, same mind games will get the same results, which is not always the case within this rapidly evolving world, especially not the case when using old formulas for new situations. Old mental formulas do not formulate better outcomes. You can't change by doing the same thing over and over. If you are continually experiencing bad thoughts, emotions, and lifestyle consequences, where you are continually stressed, miserable, or unfulfilled, then obviously you have a bad mental formula that keeps manifesting that bad result. Therefore, change the mental formula and you change the result. You start playing better mind games. You see, nobody is stuck within a life that they can't change. Life becomes unstuck once we update the unconscious aspect with superior mind programs that have conditioned responses that garner better results. However, we do need to reclaim the power of free will so that we can break the existing mind programs and then determine a better future. The power of free will is increased once we become aware of how we are mind programmed. Which leads me on to this next topic called the seismic shift. Roughly 15 years ago, I was this enthusiastic golfer that played a substandard game. When I was out on the course, I was often knee-deep in the bramble or bunkered in the sand traps. A steel hatchet and spade would have made a vast improvement to my game, but not one to blame my tools. Clearly there was something wrong with my golf swing. It was imbalanced, wayward, and inconsistent. Relevant to the theme of balance, here is a quick 101 on the ideal golf swing. 4 components form the complete arc of a swing. It begins with a backswing, then downswing, the point of impact, and the follow through to a finished stance. When you have a balanced golf swing, it equals good and consistent golf. The result is almost always a straight shot in the direction that you want the golf ball to go. If only golf were that simple. Most amateur golfers have a flawed swing. This flawed swing is an imbalanced swing arc with a club face that is offset from target. The result is an uncontrollable curving ball flight to the left, which is known as a hook shot, or to the right, which is known as a slice shot. Unbeknownst to my ignorance, throughout the years of playing golf with an imbalanced swing, I had conditioned both my mind and muscle memory with the habit of producing a wild shot to the left, known within the game as a snap hook, which is as bad as it sounds, when my terrible swing habit equaled equally poor game results. However, the guidance that I received from a golf professional soon shifted that for me. I remember the golf professional saying to me, "Right, Russell, line up for your next shot, but this time, as you swing backwards, take the golf club outside of its usual arc." I remember saying, "Are you sure? Why don't I still hit the ball badly, but this time in the other direction?" "Just trust me and do it," encouraged the pro. So I did what he said. Whack! I duffed the practice shot. Whack, whack, whack. Practice shot after practice shot was a complete mishit. Golf can be a frustrating game indeed. Basically, the golf professional had advised me to trade one bad extreme for another. He instructed me to swing the golf club in the opposite direction to how I was usually doing it. In effect, correcting my golf swing by asking me to go off balance in the other direction. At the time, it seemed like the most unorthodox method and baffled me to say the least. I did, however, want the help, and since I was totally invested in the lessons, I paid less attention to my skepticism and more credence to his advice. The first few weeks of me playing golf with my newly adapted swing was disastrous, to say the least. Playing golf, even worse than before, I sprayed the golf ball everywhere. I found myself on roadways, at the bottom of lakes, or inside the tall grass with the snakes. I was left feeling demoralised and discouraged because of it. I have to admit that my newly adapted golf swing felt awkward and restrictive, and it was a real effort to apply deep concentrated thought to execute each shot. Each time I hit a bad golf shot, there was a negative feedback, which came in the form of this niggly voice inside my head that kept saying, "This is stupid, it's completely wrong, and it will never work," followed with, "I just can't do this anymore, let's just go back to what we know best." Suffice to say, I ignored that self-defeating voice and soldiered on with the golf professional's instructions. Then occasionally I would experience this flash of brilliance, a pure masterstroke, a perfect strike, where the golf ball would fizz out from the club's sweet spot and smother the target with pinpoint accuracy. It was far superior in every way to how I'd played golf before, and it was evidence enough to prove that I was capable of playing a much greater game. 11 golf lessons into my swing transformation, the golf pro asked me, "Are you still focused on swinging the golf club the opposite way?" "Yeah, my game's been awful," I protested with a beady eye. "Good. Now stop thinking about it." "What do you mean?" I puzzled. He said, "Just naturally swing the golf club without being focused on it." For the first 20 minutes or so of practice, I hit the most awful shots. Then I started to consistently strike the ball with more power, accuracy, and flight control. Practice shot after practice shot, the ball started to fizz out from the sweet spot of the club face with more consistency. Later that same day, and with me pleased as punch, we broke for lunch and then reviewed my golf swing via the camera recording of the lesson. I was astonished to see that my golf swing was perfectly balanced. It was correct. From being totally imbalanced to 100% perfectly balanced, how was it possible to change the habit of my golf swing with a corrective method that required me to do something that was completely off balance? It made no sense to me. It was only until many years later, through the umpteen failures of trying to break through my addictive lifestyle habits, that I finally realized how that corrective method actually works. It has now become the gold standard of how I break unwanted habits and form new ones that improve the quality of my life. When imbalanced with deeply ingrained traits and habits that keep producing negative results, clearly one has conditioned the unconscious aspect of the mind-body to swing the wrong way, which also means that the odds of breaking the ingrained ways of the habitual self are stacked 95% against oneself. The 95% body power of the unconscious habitual self will always try to subvert the mind's weaker 5% willpower to change. The habitual self will always try to sabotage the new you that wants to deviate from the status quo. Does that make sense? You see, the fact is, we are subverted by the dominant mind programs of our habitual self. That's why it feels uncomfortable and sometimes a stressful struggle when trying to do something new. The first hurdle that we face when making breakthrough changes is to overcome the habits of our mind programs. It is only with the aid of being aware of the triggers and patterns of the habits that we want to break that we are able to implement what I refer to as the seismic shift. The seismic shift is a concept to describe a pattern interrupt. We need to implement a seismic shift that interrupts the mind programs of the habitual self so that we stop ourselves from following through with the usual habits. The seismic shift is a correction method that can be used to break the unwanted patterns of eating disorders, substance abuse issues, negative emotions, even situational or relational problems. The aim of the seismic shift is to implement an opposite response, this 180-degree turnabout to disrupt and reverse the unconscious programming of the habitual self, short circuit and diffuse the psychoneurological wiring of our habits. The seismic shift is done with two simultaneous actions. They are reverse associate and replace stimulus. Reverse associate means to break the conditioned response of a habit with an opposite response. Here is a simple example of how to reverse associate to a bad food habit that you want to break. If the conditioned response is, I'm going to eat that lovely cake, you would remove that thought trigger by reversing the thought with the new response, I won't eat that disgusting cake. Now, as simple as that sounds, you will be amazed at how much power the spoken word actually does have to linguistically affect change within you. Most of what you have done in your life, you have done so because you have spoken it into your existence. You are always affirming and actioning your deeds into existence with the spoken word or the inner dialogue that's going on inside your head. Likewise, you can also undo your actions by counteracting your thoughts and spoken words with a renewed intention. That's a subject that we discuss and a method that we deal with throughout this entire program. Now let's move on to what it means by replacing stimulus. Replacing stimulus is a two-pronged approach. We remove ourselves from the external stimulus that could potentially trigger a conditioned response towards a negative result, whilst simultaneously connecting with an alternative stimulus that will trigger a positive result. Replacing the original stimulus with an alternative stimulus is important because there is a void, the impulsive urge and desire to have stimulus that must be diverted into something else. Using the cake habit as the example, to remove from the original stimulus would mean no more visiting cake shops, no more cake in the fridge, no more being with people that eat cakes. Finding alternative stimulus means to adopt a healthier option, a new sweet treat that has natural ingredients like fruit, honey, maple syrup, etc. Whatever habits are having a negative effect over you, to break the pattern, you will need to create a seismic shift, reverse associate your relationship to the habit, and replace the stimulus with an alternative method. The seismic shift is to interrupt the usual practice with a complete U-turn, where one must change the rules, upset the status quo, rearrange the environment, and do something different. The first stumbling block, however, is to accept that drastic change is needed. Often it is the conveniences, the securities, the comforts, and the pleasures that the free won't mentality does not want to be without. Drastic change means that we have to do something uncomfortable. Drastic change can also affect relational dynamics. When making drastic changes, the people that we know can be wary, opposed, unhappy, or unsupportive of the changes that we want to implement. Realize now that a seismic shift will encompass disruptive pains. Realize that either the environmental, situational, or relational factors must change, or that you must change your relationship to them. To break negative habits and make positive progress, the seismic shifts that you need to implement in your life will be in direct proportion to the longevity, type, size, and potency of the habits that you wish to break and then make. The more entrenched you are to your current habits, the greater the seismic shift that you will need to make. Many years back, I was addicted to watching television for up to 5 hours per day. For over 3 decades of my life, I had wasted my precious time on consuming unproductive garbage on the TV. So to find the spare time to do the work that was required to make progress in my life, I came to the realization that I had to overcome this one addiction. However, there were many failed attempts to unplug from my daily dose of digital stimuli. I tried reducing my TV time, and then I stuck a large sign across the TV screen that read, "Every time you watch me, you are not working on your dreams." And it didn't work. I would rip that sign off from the TV and then lounge back into my conditioned programming. Pun intended. In fact, nothing worked to curtail my addiction. I was that much of a TV addict. So, in the end, I was left with no other choice but to go cold turkey. I threw the TV out with the garbage. I removed the stimulus from my environment. Now, throwing the TV out of the house, I appreciate, might sound a bit drastic to you. And yet, that was the only way that I could break the habit of a 3-decade addiction. Needless to say, I was rewarded with 5 hours of free time to work on my self-development goals and enjoy new hobbies. It also took multiple relapses and the severe trauma of several lifestyle collapses to finally realize and accept that in order to overcome a 2-decade-long addiction to alcohol and drugs, I had to disconnect from everything I knew. Everything I knew was in some way supportive of my addiction. The usual people, places, possessions, and predicaments were structured around my substance abuse. So to make a seismic shift and break those patterns, I had to walk away from everything that I knew my entire life and relocate to a safe place that was stimulus free. That seismic shift included me letting go of childhood friendships, not spending time with family members, removing myself from a stressful job, and foregoing a social life. For over 5 years, I practically lived like a monk on the outskirts of society and in complete isolation. I had to live in a way that was completely opposite to the life that had supported my addictions. Personal transformations do require us to be in a stimulus-free space, even if that means extricating from certain relationships and environments, even if that means ripping everything up to start again fresh. Breakthrough changes are not easy. Letting go of those beloved lifestyle attachments that we've grown so accustomed to is a scary conundrum. The judgment is clouded with uncertainty and self-doubt, coupled to these feelings of remorse and a sense of abandonment towards the things that we consider leaving behind. The habitual self will also protest and rationalize why we don't need to undertake drastic lifestyle changes. It does eat my grapes to feed you sour grapes, but the oldest habits do die the hardest. Not to say that you can't teach the old dog a few new tricks. The unconscious aspect of the habitual self can be reconditioned with new experiences. The strategies, methods, and skills that I teach you in this program will show you how to create seismic shifts and cultivate new habits that will give you positive lifestyle results. This now leads me on to a topic and phrase called I will perceive it, then see it. Breaking on through our psychological and lifestyle issues requires us to take 100% responsibility for the changes that we want to see. This means that all forms of outward blame must immediately stop. We must stop blaming the people, the environmental factors, the situations, the lack of resources, or anything else that we pointed the finger at to accuse of, that's why I can't, and it's because of them. No destiny is more damned than the one which encompasses outward blame. To believe that there is this one person, one circumstance, one thing, one problem that is keeping you where you are and preventing you from having what you desire is to render yourself powerless. We become powerless when we fall into the trap of thinking that we are by some mysterious fate destined for misfortune and that we perhaps don't deserve happiness and prosperity. So why do we outward blame? Why are we accusing them, that, or they as being the problem? Well, outward blame is an easy game to fall victim of because reality is never short of the unjust, the unfair, the corrupt, the nonsensical, the pitfalls, the hoops, the barriers, the red lights, the you name it, of why things out there are the cause of our distress. There are endless scenarios in which to think of every reasonable excuse why you can't be, do, and have something. We are also good at being harsh on ourselves, especially when it comes to feeling guilty or shameful over something that happened and that we feel partly responsible for. We can berate the self for being useless, not good enough, or for getting it wrong. Whether you accuse yourself or the other as being the effective cause of your demise, at the same time, you mitigate yourself from being the remedial cause. When focused on the problem, you can never be the solution. Just know this: to believe that you are a victim of something out there or even a victim of yourself will only keep you bound to a reality of victimhood. If you think that you are not worthy of being or doing something greater than you are now, you will remain a slave to the limited thinking that keeps you exactly where you are. It is of no use to play the role of the hopeless victim. The victim will always be a victim of that which he or she has vilified as being the reason why it must be this way and it can't be that way. Neither is it of any use to look for a saviour that will magically rescue you from danger and then whisk you away to better times. No one can save you but you. Even when people throw a life raft your way, you are still the one that has to climb into it. Appreciate, therefore, that you have willed your soul into this life. Understand that the circumstances that you have arrived at today are a result of the choices that you made yesterday. It was your consent, your compliance, your agreeance, or obedience to every person, moment, and event that has led you to this point here. You have been and always will get what you tolerate in this life. You are the advocate of your problems and you can be the solution to your problems. So take ownership of that. When we do take responsibility for the changes that we want to see, we also accept that we can't change what we can't control, that we can't influence the unresponsive, persuade the unwilling, or convince the ignorant, which is to say that there is no use expecting others to change or trying to save others or bring them along with you on your unique journey. No matter what you try to convince them of, people are always going to think and do whatever they want, not what you prefer. Besides, your time is wasted on people and situations that are irredeemable and irretrievable. Nothing fresh can be found in that which is past its sell-by date. Therefore, whatever current fix, attachment, hope, desire, or ideal that you are holding on to with someone that you think might come around to your way of thinking and then change with you, just simply let it go. Let bygones be bygones. Let go so that you can move on with new actions that will manifest life results that you truly desire. The best efforts that you can make are those which right your own ship, where you maintain a stable frame of self-control within all conditions, and that does require you to detach from and remain impervious to those who are corrupted, compromised, unhelpful, unwilling, or just plain out of control. You can't stabilize yourself when associated with those who are destabilized. If you are to raise your standards, you must rise above those with low standards. You must cut their weight from your ankles. You must define the boundaries of who and what is or is not tolerable in your life. You must define what you are willing and unwilling to accept. Defining boundaries often does mean that we must refuse to tolerate certain behaviours of our close friends and even family members that would otherwise hinder our progress. When you do ascend to greater standards, then you will become the exemplar for those you love and care for to either follow or not. The type of responsibilities that you take on and the boundaries that you set do correlate with your outlook on life. You will only orient yourself according to what you perceive is possible. The best outlook, therefore, is to have a solution-oriented perception that can always perceive a better way forward and see a reality that's beyond the one that is currently in front of you. I must therefore ask, are you a person that allows reality to determine what is possible for you, or do you determine the type of reality that is possible for you? Because if you are looking at your current reality as the yardstick to determine what is possible for you, where you are thinking about your current relationship, financial status, resources, environment, and economy to establish what you can or can't do, then your thinking is limited to the limitations of what you currently see and know. To make breakthrough changes to your life, you must look beyond the reality that you currently know of so that your mind is unencumbered and free to imagine different perceptions of reality. You must perceive differently to what is to achieve something different to what is. when you adhere to the as within, so without philosophy, which is to say that you first envisage a new reality inside your mind and then, with absolute faith, project it outwards with new behaviours, you will move towards cultivating that envisaged reality without any prior proof of it being possible. You can motion yourself towards that which you can't see on the basis that your intended desires will take shape and form during the manifestation process itself. The manifestation process is to make the unseen seen. This absolute faith without proof mentality does require you to trade the old phrase of "I will believe it when I see it" for the new phrase of "I will perceive it, then see it." There is a clear distinction between those two phrases. With the phrase "I will believe it when I see it," we are waiting for reality to inform us what is possible and for reality to change before we do anything. With the new phrase "I will perceive it, then see it," regardless of the current conditions of reality, we are choosing to be the one that predetermines and previews what we want from reality, and then focusing our behaviours and actions that will help us to manifest its promise. "I will perceive it, then see it" is the one maxim that will forever shift the way you approach life. Through its perceptual lens, you will always be able to envisage a reality that is superior to the one that is in front of you. You will be able to think independent from, despite of, contrary to, and more optimistic than your current life conditions. Rather than focusing on what's wrong, waiting for things to be right, or making excuses why you can't, you will instead take the leading initiative to make change happen. With the "I will perceive it, then see it" mentality, you will morph from a person of compliance to a person of prescience. Instead of just playing by the terms of reality as they are presented to you, you will start defining the terms of reality and then start moving towards a better future. You will utilize the power of your thoughts to shape reality. Then, you will truly know what it means to mind over your matters.